I want to say thanks to all our speakers, and it's amazing how much information they packed into a challenging schedule, so thank you to all of them. We are obviously approaching lunchtime, and all of the speakers in this past panel, all four of them, are also at tables, and you'll have a chance to interact with them there. And we also want to have a question and answer session. But we also want to have lunch. So I'm told that there are food trucks, and we don't all want to be standing in line at the same moment at the food truck. So if you need to go out and go get something to eat in the meantime, I understand, but please be very quiet when you're doing it. But we will start a question and answer with the same method. If people have questions, you can come to the mic. Right in the aisle.
While people are coming, could I just say there's going to be a tour of the Harvard gardens that they've been using biochar, and there'll be a tour of this during the lunch break. There'll be a tour of the Harvard gardens where they've been using biochar at lunch, during lunch.
Okay. My question is for the green cover people and also the biochar people. As I understand, to keep the mycorrhizal fungi network strong, you don't want to till your soil at all. And so if you're turning the green cover in, isn't that messing up the networks? And also with the biochar, how do you get it in without destroying the networks? Do you understand my question?
You're talking about not tilling.
Not tilling, because you want to keep
that?
the network strong. So how do you get the green cover in, and how do you get the biochar
in? Yeah, not tilling is, I guess it's over tillage that we're trying to stop. And actually there are a lot of organic farmers now that are going back to shallow plowing as opposed to rototilling. Because the zone of concentration of all the microbial life is in that top 6 inches of soil. And the problem with overtilling is that you essentially move all of that available carbon to where the bacteria and the fungi can get to it, so you have this huge burst of energy, and then it's gone. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to minimize the amount of disturbance. So if you can no-till, that's great. You know, like for example, the Rodale Institute they're using a machine. It's called a cover crop roller. It's essentially a big drum that has welded fins on the edge that crimp. It lays down and it crimps the cover crop, so you end up with essentially a mat, and then you plant into that. Another option is to use cover crops that winter kill, like oats and peas, as your fall cover crop, because they won't withstand a northeast winter. Then you would essentially be able to plant right into that with minimal disturbance. But what we're really trying to get away from is the rototiller, because the rototiller it just destroys soil structure, and it ends up creating, it gives you the false impression of loosening the soil and fluffing it up, but soil reconsolidates into, you know, a block that, and then you're essentially worse off than you were before you started.
I want to remind everybody to keep your questions singular. One question per person. Thank you.
Hi, I'm T.H. Culhane from Mercy College. Wondering why the anaerobic digestion of kitchen waste into fuel and fertilizer, which we're demonstrating outside, we've been doing in our college for 6 years and seeing it all over India, why that has failed to get into the toolkit of permaculture and remediation, eco-remediation, why it's still a sort of orphan child in this suite of solutions. It's certainly all over India, China, Nepal, Kenya. What is it about our movement in Europe and the United States that's made small-scale kitchen waste to fuel and fertilizer not talked about very often?
Can I take that? It's actually something I'm doing a lot of work with anaerobic composting, and the first stage of it
Yep.
has to be done properly. And it kind of varies depending upon feedstocks, but you can really break down everything. We're utilizing, testing the bokashi
Yep.
form of that, if that's what you're talking about.
No, no, we're doing at our college just straight kitchen waste into tanks at the
Right.
college and then
Okay.
into.
This started with, they had a digester here at the Harvard Law School,
Uh-huh.
which went through a 24-hour process.
Yep.
And very difficult feedstock to deal with initially in terms of putting it into the composting stream and making it functional. We then took it further. It took a lot of process to get it to the point where you lowered the phosphorus levels to the degree where it was really usable. So it took a lot of energy. I think that there's a lot of potential in this form of composting.
Yeah.
And I think so far we kind of started off from the base to see with the bokashi where you're working with 7 different types of bacteria. And we're seeing really, really useful results of bringing back soils through that. But of course, it's looking at the initial anaerobic composting, getting it into the stream properly for it to go through its aerobic stage, and then you're really producing an incredibly high quality soil
Yeah.
renovation. But it's
Indeed.
very specific, and believe me, it's on the top of my list.
Good. Come on up, because we're showing it outside now, too,
Okay.
so we can have a good conversation.
Yeah.
It's great.
Right.
Thank you very much
Right.
for that.
Thank you very much. I've been a composter for years, and I've been frustrated at times for not being able to get my compost pile to really heat up. And I have a compost thermometer like 3 feet long, and I'm almost measuring my temperature of my compost. And then I recently learned that actually the data suggests that a cold compost retains more nutrients. This may be something for the biochar person to respond to as well. It seems like the volatilization that happens with heat can actually be detrimental to the nutrient levels in the compost. So I'm wondering about your thoughts for anyone who knows about compost to talk about a loss of nutrients from heat and whether in fact a cold compost, although it may take longer to produce a compost, is actually more nutrient rich.
Okay, I think we always look at different characteristics within whatever amendment we're using, and certainly the piles that you leave that are not heating up have some excellent biology. In fact, we're doing, there's a group called Earth Matter that's doing that out on Governor's Island. In fact, we're sending a lot of our wood chips to help them set up their piles. In fact, we've been helping them set up the piles, and there's really, really good biology coming from that. It's different from what you get from a thermal pile. I think all of them can be utilized really well, but you want to, again, know what are the characteristics of the particular compost you're utilizing and how you're going to incorporate that into a particular environmental condition.
I'd also just say, if you're for home composting, there's a lot of things you just want to be careful of. I know if you want to be careful of your carbon to nitrogen ratio. Oftentimes, for example, things that are very nitrogen rich, like grass clippings, that would tend to make it very, the things that are smelly, and that if you just let them sit, you really do want to balance those out with high carbon materials. And I would say that sometimes if you have the carbon too high, say if like wood chips or sawdust, things like that, it can actually stall the compost out. So if you're not seeing a lot of breakdown, then maybe adding some more nitrogen, or if you're getting it a little too smelly, then adding a little bit more the carbon materials. And again, the variety of materials will get you a better quality compost. So ideally, you want to kind of get a lot of different things in there to get a higher quality. So.
Size also matters. The critical mass to retain heat and to get the process going. At home, I practice kind of a form of bokashi where I just store all of our food waste in 5-gallon buckets. And then, over the course of like 4 to 6 months, those buckets will get mixed in with the compost of leaves and so but it's amazing how much heat a big pile can generate, and it's a lot of that biological activity dissipates, I think, in small batches.
Is there time?
There is.
Okay, I have a question along that line.
And then I would remind you that you can meet all of the panelists at their tables, and we are going to start right up at 1:15.
Will I be able to ask a question?
I'm sorry.
May I ask
What?
a question?
But I was here, and nobody acknowledged
No,
me.
you weren't.
She was first.
So I can't?
Excuse me, who's? Thank you. A question along that line. I'm a master gardener. I'm interested in home and community gardens, and I've been composting for a long time, now finally getting it successful because at home it's a smaller operation. My question is specifically about biochar, which I'm just learning about, and I would like to know how that might be applied in a community garden setting. So this is my thought. For invasive plant roots and seeds, we sort those items out of the compost. We use the green leafy things in the compost and all the sticks. I would like to try to set up a solar oven that takes place in the yard to kill those, the seeds and potentially regenerating roots of the invasives, but also sticks. So why is 500 degrees important, and can it be made into biochar and dehydrated enough at a lower temperature, such as 200?
Well, if you use any of the available biochar making equipment, even the small ones in your backyard, you'll get up to your 500 degrees. You don't have to worry about, is it going to make it? The pyrolytic gases come off.
The issue is,
yeah?
I guess you're not burning it, so you're not releasing it into the atmosphere.
Well, you're burning the gases are going
The
into
gases,
the atmosphere.
but
yeah.
not the carbon?
Yeah. But 50% of the carbon stays behind in your biochar. Yeah.
Okay, so you recommend using a burner
But
of some sort?
I'm sorry, it's not actually, you're burning the gases, you're not burning the what becomes the char.
You need a
It's
source
pyrolytic.
of heat. What are you burning to create
There-
the heat?
We'll talk about it at the lunch thing, but there's so much information on the internet on
Okay,
all the
thank
different
you very
types of
much.
stoves that you can possibly
I will look into
want.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have a very brief question?
I hope so. I've been composting for years also, and it worked like magic. Everything went down. We're a vegetarian household, so no cooked foods, no animal products. Everything just went down. We put them in the leaves. We put in some Excelsior, some shredded paper. About a year ago, there was a big project at the end of our street where they tore up the city street and everything like that, and there's rats galore around the neighborhood now. The city inspector came and told me the fault was my bird feeder and my composter. So I've been forced to eliminate the bird feeder, which I would have done for the summer anyway. And also I've had to deconstruct didn't have to, but I chose to deconstruct my composter, and I'll rebuild it somewhere else. Does, I guess, T or somebody who works in Cambridge have any idea what to do about this problem more generally?
So a lot of the cities are actually really good about recommending different composters that are rat-proof. So there's a lot of different types of composting units now that I know City of Somerville is fantastic about it. So that there might be some recourse at the local city level would be a good way to go. And then also, I guess, I don't know if you have any recommendations, but the city in particular, you might have some comments, would be helpful. And they have recommendations.
I actually serve on the rodent committee in Cambridge, believe it or not, and had a lot of problems with rats in my backyard in East Cambridge. We are very dense, and so there's a lot of issues with rats. And I did have a lot of problems with them breaking into my composter. And what I ended up doing ultimately was mostly not putting food in the composter, even if it's just vegetarian. The smells and stuff attract the rats. So I mostly just do yard waste and then a little bit of food, corn husks, things like that. And that seems to work fairly well. But it is a real problem, and you can get a commercial composter maybe to pick up your food waste and turn that more efficiently into compost, and then just focus on yard waste and a little bit of food scrap.
Well, they told me to get a rat-proof composter. I went online and I didn't find one.
Okay.
But there were some do-it-yourself projects that were
Well,
proposed. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would, if you would, you might want to visit the fellow up here who deals with the bacterial breakdown, because, again, I've worked with a community garden in New York City on 13th Street that's called El Sol, and they're doing this bokashi composting as well. The
What's that word?
Bokashi, B-O-K-A-S-H-I. It breaks down everything, but what happens is it's bacterial, so once it goes past a certain level of breakdown, and it's not, the rats don't like it. So in fact, it's helped tremendously in terms of the rat issues.
Okay, I'll look into those suggestions.
So you
Thank
might want to look that
Thanks.
up.
One other option is also vermicomposting indoors. You can also do it in a way that does not
Yes.
smell. And again, just when you're adding food waste, just putting it in and then covering it over. So whether it's with loose shredded cardboard or any different carbon source. So those can
And
be
the
some options.
diversity issue that you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
The diversity
Yeah.
of feedstocks is key.
Thanks so much to everybody, and we'll see you at 1:15.